Good morning, guys. As you can probably hear, I'm a bit sick with a cold, so please excuse me if I sound a bit strange. In part 3 of the multi-workbench series, I show you how I built a table saw rib fence. Anyway, as you can saw at the beginning of the video, I started with cutting all the necessary parts. Then I started to glue and screw the supports for the guide rails. The small wooden parts you can see are only for stabilization, so that the 90-degree angle is guaranteed. I didn't draw an exact plan for the rib fence in advance, which is actually disadvantageous from that point of view. The only thing I did was make a sketch. Of course, all screws are pre-drilled, and a countersunk drill bit was also used. For future projects, I will definitely draw accurate plans in preparation to minimize mistakes later on. A lot of YouTubers use SketchUp for this purpose, and I will have a look at this tool as well. Here you can see for the first time the guardrails I used. Basically, these are nothing more than 60mm thick steel rods that can be screwed on one side. These rods are available on Amazon in a wide variety of designs. I will put a link in the video description. I used a total of 2 of these rails, one at the front and one at the back of the table. I had to fine-tune the back rail with a couple of spacers, so that both rails were exactly parallel. Kind of ball bearing blocks are used for these rails. 2 of these blocks are used on each side, which are screwed to a piece of plywood. Unfortunately, I messed up a bit during this process, as you can see here. The screws only just barely worked out. The plywood base for the rail could have been a bit wider and deeper. If I had drawn an exact plan, this probably wouldn't have happened. In the next step, I started with the rib fence. For this, I cut a groove in 2 plywood boards. I will explain why I needed this groove later in the video. Then it was time again to cut some plywood boards. I used these boards for the rib fence. The board that rests on top got a hole for the extraction pipe. Now some people might ask why I have planned an extraction here. Well, the right side of the table will be equipped with a router later. So later I will have my circular saw on the left side and my router table on the right side. The basic construction of the rib fence is, as you can see, nothing exciting. I used a few placeholders in the middle, glued everything together with wood glue, used a few clamps and screwed the whole thing together. The only important thing was to make sure that everything had a 90-degree angle. The sides of the fans were about 3 cm higher than the actual fans. I thought that the top would be a good place to put pans and other stuff. I rounded off the top corners of the side panels and made a hole in the middle of the right panel for the dust collection system of the router. The bearing blocks with the plywood blade were aligned with the table. So I still needed spacers so that the fans didn't touch the table. I used 2 mm thick plywood for this. Unfortunately, as you can see, the focus of the camera was on the glue bot. After the glue was dry, I placed the fans on the bearing blocks at the right angle to the table. There was also glue between the block and the fans. Once the glue was dry, I removed the fans and the blocks from the table and screwed them together. Now it is time for the locking mechanism. For this I cut 4 handle-like shapes out of plywood. The 2 outer ones will serve as guides for the threaded rod, and the inner ones are actually just a kind of spacer. I marked a drill hole in 2 outer parts. The drill hole was 3 mm from the center away. Then I drilled a 70 mm hole on the marked position and used an M17 threaded rod with an M17 nut as a template. After chiseling out the shape of the M17 nut with wood chisels, and the nuts were glued with CA glue. Then it was time to get the handle into shape. For this I used my old angle grinder with a 40 grit sanding disc for wood. After the rough sanding, I sanded by hand to get a smooth finish. The last step was to oil the finished handle with wood oil. While I was preparing a threaded rod for the locking mechanism, my angle grinder started to smoke. And unfortunately he said goodbye forever. Fortunately, I still had a cordless angle grinder. Then I drilled a hole in the threaded rod for a smaller threaded rod. The smaller M6 threaded rod runs through the fans to the back, where a locking mechanism also sits. If you look closely, you can see that I welded a spacer to the threaded rod. If you don't have a welding machine, you can also solve this with a nut. Then it was time to put everything together. The threaded rod for the handle, some nuts, the side panel, and also the threaded rod for the backside. Here you have a look to the side panel on the right side with the hole in the middle for the router table. These two parts are the actual locking mechanism, or the most important parts from the locking mechanism. When the handle is pressed down, these two parts will lock the rib fence. Later in the video I will show this again in detail. Besides the hinges, I also used a few nuts and a tension spring on each side. Of course, I didn't miss the opportunity to mount a measuring bar. This bar is made of aluminium and has a sticky strip on the back. But to be on the safe side, I also used some CA glue. The black line that you can see here is simply a line that I drew with a permanent marker on acrylic glass. With CA glue I glued this piece of acrylic glass to the bottom of the metal angle. Actually, I wanted to publish a video every week, but because of my full-time job, I probably won't be able to do that. But I will try to upload something at least every 2 weeks. Oh, and what I forgot. I also have a wife who needs my services from time to time, as you can see here. After I sanded everything, I sealed it all with clear lacquer. And last but not least, I will show you how it works. Just push the handle down and the two hinges tighten and lock the fence. I would be happy about a subscription and also about a like or a comment. Thank you and goodbye.